Welcome, and thanks to everyone for being here today. Connecting the Dots, Planet People Power was launched by the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ohio group in September 2021. We meet monthly to provide a platform for issues of environmental justice, along with actions that can be performed during each meeting. Our monthly topics are driven by you and the immediate areas of environmental injustice that you are confronting right now. You can learn more about UUJO at https://uujo.org. The EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Today's topic is lead service line replacement and the human impact of inaction. And we will begin by having an opening reading from Linda New.
All right, this is just from What the Eyes Don't See. This is by Dr. Mona from Flint, Michigan. And her point is just a short little excerpt, little blurb. And her point is just how she came to be the person who, called out the authorities in Flint, Michigan about the lead pipes, the lead in the water. So she says, like lots of young people, I was drawn to advocacy, but the chance to really do something meaningful had come by accident. I was the right person in the right job with the right set of skills and the right team who saw a chance to make a difference. The Flint water crisis never should have happened. It was entirely preventable. And when the water supply was switched and not properly treated, it should have ended when the residents raised their voices and their jugs of brown water. I certainly wasn't the most important piece of the Flint puzzle. I was just the last piece. The state wouldn't stop lying until somebody came along to prove that real harm was being done to kids. And then the house of cards fell. And it's a wonderful book. I don't know if anybody has read it, but she's a huge, a strong voice and who speaks truth to power. So then I'm going to turn this back to Laurel.
Okay. So we have two speakers today who are going to be addressing this topic. The first is Robin Brown of Concerned Citizens Organized Against Lead. And speaking with her is Crystal Davis. Crystal MC Davis serves as the Vice President of Policy and Strategic Engagement for the Alliance for the Great Lakes, a regional nonprofit focused on water policy with offices throughout the Great Lakes region. Welcome.
Thank you. And my name is Robin Brown, and I am here with Crystal, and she's going to actually start off for us today.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm going to try to share my screen to go into the presentation. Just a second. All right. Hold on. Hold on from beginning. All right. I should have this down by now, but Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today, even if it's virtually. It feels like we're having an opportunity to finally get back in community with one another, and that feels good. So thank you for allowing me to join your group. I am with the Alliance for the Great Lakes, and we are a 51-year-old traditional environmental organization working at the regional level. We're considered a regional organization, but we have work at the local, state, and federal levels. We're based in Chicago with 6 offices throughout the Great Lakes states. In terms of our work, we primarily focus on policy. That is our bread and butter. However, we also have a number of stewardship programs. Most notably, we have an Adopt a Beach program where we have groups of volunteers that go out and clean up the beaches. And what's unique about that experience is that they record what they find, and we take that data and share it with researchers to guide social awareness campaigns. So in terms of our policy work, it really fits into three big buckets. The aquatic invasive species and keeping them out of the Great Lakes. We have agriculture and water issues like trying to mitigate harmful algal blooms in the western basin of Lake Erie. And then we have our drinking water work, which includes lead service line replacement, water affordability, addressing aging water infrastructure. And honestly, that is our newest body of work, which was created after listening to communities. And so we had a listening tour where we went around Northeast Ohio and heard from diverse communities about their priorities as it relates to water, and heard that water affordability and lead service line replacement were huge issues. And so we wrote a report about it called Step 1, Shut Up and Listen, because that's the key to listening, to trying to connect with communities. The report we didn't write, Step 2, Act on what you heard. And so we've acted on what we've heard and really incorporated drinking water issues into our suite of priorities for our organization. Social, racial, and economic justice are inseparable from environmental justice. We cannot achieve our vision of a Great Lakes enjoyed by all when systemic racism is allowed to permeate our society unchecked. It's important to lift this up because in June of 2020, everybody had a statement, even Ben & Jerry's had a statement. And it's more important to talk about what we've done beyond that statement, what we were doing before that statement, and especially after. And at our organization, we recognize that environmentalists won't be able to do this alone. There is a connection between social justice and racial justice, economic justice, health justice. And it's important that we collaborate in this fight to achieve clean water for all. So I talked about the listening tour. In addition to that, we also heard from communities that their proximity to the lake had a direct correlation to their sense of obligation to it. That was a new one for me because folks in Lorain, when I asked them would they be interested in doing a beach cleanup, told me that, of course, it's my beach. And then on the east side of Cleveland, they were like, no, I don't go down there. And then the youth took it a step further. We also had a youth focus group, and the youth said, minority youth in Cleveland told us that they were offended that we asked them to clean up the beach because they don't use the beach. And the only people they know that go down to the beach are white kids from the suburbs. So in essence, we were asking them to go and clean up after white kids from the suburbs, which was disrespectful and offensive. And so that really touched me because we make assumptions about our youth and just need to sit down and really hear their experience and their perspectives. And that's definitely been incorporated into how we move as an organization. We talk about drinking water issues. Infrastructure is all the buzz these days, right? We're hearing about it at the federal level. It's important to really understand the big numbers. In terms of wastewater infrastructure and drinking water infrastructure needs over the next 20 years, Ohio is facing about a $28 billion price tag, $billion. The Great Lakes alone is facing a $188 billion price tag over the next 20 years. So when we see these big numbers at the federal level, they're impressive and we're happy to get the attention that we need on water infrastructure. However, this is a down payment on a big bill. And so let's keep that in perspective. The other thing is when we talk about drinking water infrastructure, from the city line into your home and then the infrastructure inside of your home, the nation's drinking water system has been graded a D by the American Society of Civil Engineers. We know that additional funding is needed at every level of government. And then the wastewater system was graded a D+. And so we're in a situation now where I don't know about you guys and your kids, but if my kid brings a D home, that's nothing we're gonna celebrate. And so we have to be better than that. So when we talk about water infrastructure, it's more than just a water quality situation. We know that we want clean, healthy water to bathe and digest for our families. However, not addressing these issues over years has led to costly systems where you have aging pipes that are leaking water, and we're putting more water through, and that burden, that financial burden, falls on the backs of ratepayers. Especially when we know that, years ago, the federal government was investing 63% of the funding to keep the water system going, and now it's down to like 9%. And so the dismal amount of money that the federal government is really putting, and the government in general is putting behind water systems needs to be addressed. And so water affordability is something we've heard loud and clear about. We know that we work to create a bill in the legislature that would stop water shutoffs due to non-payment. That's a huge issue. We're in the middle of a pandemic where the CDC is telling people to wash their hands and wash their mask. And there were thousands of people that were in their homes, sequestered in their homes without water. And that is inhumane. And so that was a part of the legislation that we've drafted, and having emergency assistance programs, debt forgiveness programs. If you consistently pay your bill for 2 years, we should be able to forgive the bill. That more than demonstrates goodwill there. We found a legislative sponsor for the bill, Representative Erica Crawley, and then she left the state legislature to go to be a Franklin County commissioner. And so right now we have a piece of legislation. It was not yet introduced. We have the language, but we're working to find a legislative sponsor, and we would love some bipartisan support. So we're in essence drafting, kind of launching an education campaign so that legislators on both sides of the aisle can understand how this issue is impacting their constituency. The main problem, I'll tell you, is that there's no poster child for unaffordable water. When you think about Asian carp, you think about this 100-pound fish that jumps out of the water. When you think about algae blooms, you think of this water that looks like split pea soup, right? When you think of unaffordable water, what comes to mind? There's no poster child. There's nobody screaming from the rooftops, I can't afford my water. And so the education campaign is a difficult one. We know that there are health impacts, and Robin will go into some of the health impacts that lead have on humans and our bodies and our babies. And so we also know that there needs to be lead service line replacement. There are an estimated 9.3 million lead service lines in our country. And the craziest part about it is the state with the most lead service lines in the country is Illinois. Behind Illinois, Ohio. Ohio has over 650,000 lead service lines. The number one city with lead service lines in the country, Chicago. Number two city, Cleveland, Ohio. And so this is not a list where we want to be at the top. And so there definitely needs to be some legislation on that front. Again, like the Water for All bill, we've introduced we've drafted legislation. And when I say we, it means that other water advocates, I'm working with the Ohio Environmental Council and Freshwater Future and Junction Coalition of Toledo. We want a piece of legislation that will require lead service line replacement in Ohio within a 20-year time frame. So we want to get aggressive about when this will be done. These hypothetical conversations about it being done one day or soon or needs to be fast is not good enough. Creating an Office of Lead Service Line Replacement within Ohio EPA, banning partial lead service line replacement, prioritizing high-risk customers first, and definitely increasing education on lead service lines. What we're hearing in Toledo is that there may be a lead service line replacement project happening, but there was no notification to the residents around that area to let them know about flushing and what they should do and how they should go about their day. And so that's a huge issue as well. We're super excited about legislation that has been introduced to create lead abatement programs. However, it's not as robust as we would like, but we definitely consider it a possible vehicle for some of the provisions that I've outlined for you today. So in any good conversation, you should always end with what have you done for me lately? What have you been up to? And so in 2019, we launched a water and sewer service affordability assessment with the Ohio Environmental Council and Dr. Manny Teodoro. In that study, we found out that it takes 8 to 10 hours at minimum wage for a family to afford their water and sewer bill. That's a lot. In addition to that, we found that water affordability is an issue of income inequality. And so across the region, I've been a part of conversations where it kind of sounds like water affordability and addressing the issue would be a bailout for urban communities and Black communities. And that's not true. There are water affordability issues in rural communities as well. In rural communities, they can't reach economies of scale. And then in urban areas, there is historic discrimination and redlining and job discrimination and you name it. And so different issues, but still result in unaffordable water in both places. We've been working on water shutoffs during the pandemic. We have a set of case studies that's going to come out soon that examines water rate setting processes throughout Ohio. And then here in Cleveland, we've been working on local candidate and resident engagement toolkits, basically making sure that members of the community are educated on a number of priority environmental justice policies so that they can weigh in with the new mayor, the new administration, and lift and amplify community voice. So what am I willing to do after this conversation? I want to advocate for increased funding at all levels of government. We need multi-sector coalition building, not just the environmentalists alone. When I go to the State House, they know what I'm coming to talk about. When I bring a business leader, they're like, uh-oh, what's going on? And that's good because they need to know that the business sector cares about water as well. We want to educate our key stakeholders and amplify community voice. And as Kim Foreman says, that is from the ideation stage all the way through to implementation, not just bringing community in at the end. And then our call to action today is to share and adopt best practices on healthy water infrastructure implementation. One thing I'm hearing is that there are communities that are getting it right, communities that are getting it wrong, but we're not talking to each other. So as a regional organization, that's part of what I'm trying to do. We want support for full lead service line replacement with timelines and delivery plans. Let's put some accountability in the room there. Increase investments and resources. And then when we have these conversations about lead service line replacement, let's also remember to talk about workforce development and public engagement, because there are going to be a lot of jobs associated with really addressing the 650,000 lead service lines in the state of Ohio. Who gets those jobs? We need to make sure we're having that conversation early and often. And so this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if I can be of assistance to you as you continue to advocate for these issues. And then right after my presentation, I'm gonna, I think the next slide goes into Robin's. So thank
you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Crystal, for all of that wonderful, great information. And for individuals who don't know me, I am Robin Brown, the founder of Concerned Citizens Organized Against Lead, that was established in 2005 in the city of Cleveland. We are the first grassroots organization to start bringing awareness and speaking about lead poisoning in the city of Cleveland from the afflicted person's perspective. So our mission is to educate, empower, and uplift all people around lead poisoning, but especially families. I was affected by lead in 1999 when my now 28-year-old was poisoned at the age of 4. She had 70 micrograms per deciliter. Lead is measured in the body by micrograms per deciliter. And so therefore, they have to measure the lead in a child's body to determine how much lead is there. Today's concern number is now 3.25. It was previously 5 micrograms per deciliter. Now it's 3.75. The diagnosed number is still 10 micrograms per deciliter. And again, my daughter was at death, seizure, coma level. The outcomes of lead poisoning, first is the poisoning. We have children that are afflicted with attention deficit disorder, better known as ADD. We have it, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, known as ADHD. Some of the other things that kids are afflicted with, which really surprised me, we don't never hear people relating lead poisoning to brain disease. If we had people say your child has now a brain disease, I'm sure everybody would be responding differently to this, opposed to your child have lead poisoning. With that being said, I was surprised to find out that lead causes children to have impulsive behaviors, as well as not being able to link consequences to actions. But that child do grow up. A lot of myths about lead is that it stops at the age of 6, because that's the number and the age you hear a lot of people focusing on lead, which is important because that's the developmental stage. And it affects every aspect of your body. When you have a poison in your blood goes everywhere. Outside of just those small things, when we get old, it still affects us. A lot of cardiovascular issues are now being connected to lead poisoning, also cancer, diabetes, mental illness. And when that comes to our community at large, we're seeing a lot of mental illness cases arise in our teenagers, and with COVID and being isolated, it heightened our issues, as well as our children being in our homes that is afflicted with not just lead surface lines, but we have the paint. So we are now being poisoned double whammy. And we have to do something about that because it's affecting our whole community. Flint, Michigan brought the awareness of the water issue, but as you heard Crystal say, Cleveland is the second highest. And not just with the water service line, we're the 5th in the country noted for lead poisoning. So our levels is actually 3 times as bad as Flint, Michigan poisoning of our children. And then we talk about society as a whole. So with society at whole, it's affecting our education system, it's affecting our workforce development spaces, it's affecting our juvenile delinquent space, it's affecting our actually incarceration rates. The US crime rate is noted for being caused by lead poisoning. So our society is being afflicted by the effects of what lead poisoning is truly doing. If we connect the dots to every aspect of where lead is really touching, it is phenomenal. And that's why I advocate for families so much, because it's affecting not just us, and people are really focusing on our infrastructure. We have to focus on the human infrastructure as well. Crystal, you can go to the next slide. So what I would like to do is show you some things that SECO has been involved with Ohio Environmental Council, as well as the Great Lakes Alliance through these 2 videos. Crystal, on this video, because it is like 5 minutes, if you could take it over across to 3.56, started at that, and then it could speak on the space for me advocating in there. And the link will be there for you guys to share with everyone else to see the whole video.
Just 1 second. I'm trying to, that link wasn't working. I'm trying to pull it up. Just 1 second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That link wasn't working, but I have the other video. So I'm going.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump to that one.
Crystal, if you get a chance, can you put the link in chat? If we're only watching a portion of it, so people can go back and watch.
Yeah, these links aren't cooperating with me today. But
Well, what I would do is make sure that you guys have them so that you could share with the participants. But what the first one was is with Ohio Environmental Council, myself and 3 other participants around the region was speaking about our lead service lines. And for me, it's super important that we do, it's a day late. And yes, we're grateful that this space is occurring now. We're grateful that the work of all that's being done by everyone is happening, but we have to remember this is going to be a slow process, and remember that children are still being poisoned as it occurs. And so what we did as some actions outside of making videos and making regional awareness, we started a program called Clean Water Lead Safe. And through that, we were able to get a grant to start distributing water filter systems to the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, which is a disenfranchised community. And we distribute water filter systems along with lead literature, giving from 5 to 15-minute brief education and signing up 200 people for intensive lead education. So we were able to distribute actually 200 water filters, which I like to pat ourselves on the shoulder, that it took 8 hours to distribute the 200 filters, 4 hours per day, speaking to 100 people and directly given hands-on in-person conversation with these people. And we would like to continue this. And with the partnership of Environmental Health Watch, we have gotten a donation for 200 more water filters to continue this work. So our ask today for you guys would be if you can continue to help us raise funds to do donations so that we can distribute water filter systems to families as we wait for the infrastructure change. Also, reach out to all of our state representatives and asking the same. Our group feel that the state at the time, while we're in pause mode and figuring out the infrastructure space and how we're going to do it, would be nice if they would give some type of filter system to all residents and then supply replacements every 3 months by contracting with grassroots organizations to reach those communities. So asking for funds for a now outreach action that could be preventing families from being harmed until the water filter systems are in place. And I shared some other resources that Connect the Dots can share with the participants. And I'll make sure that you guys get those links through email for the videos so that you can share with the partnerships as well. And I thank you guys for the opportunity of sharing what lead poisoning is and what it does.
All right, thank you so much. That's fantastic. So the actions that we have are the fundraising for to supply lead, or to supply water filters for people that are affected in the while we're waiting for water infrastructure to be replaced, updated, and contacting legislators regarding funding for water filters, and contacting legislators regarding bills that are currently in committee for a bill specifically that's currently in committee for to provide funding for lead abatement. So I am going to say that at this point, we can take some time right now to do these actions that that Crystal and Robin have been telling us about. I am going to put in chat a link to a Padlet. And I'm hoping that everyone can get to this Padlet. You just have to click on it. It's not, you don't have to have any kind of app or anything on your computer. You just click on it and it will give you a script to like a potential script that you can modify or you can use exactly as is and send to a member of the Finance Committee, which is where House Bill 587 is is under consideration at this moment. It has a couple quotes and it's very brief. By all means, add to it if you want to add to it, but we're encouraging people at this moment to use the link that's in Padlet and contact the members of the Finance Committee and to use the script or some version of that is in Padlet to send that message. And then I am going to, at this moment, I'm going to share the Padlet. I don't know how many people are able to get to, but it looks just like this. So here's our Padlet. We have one script that can be sent directly to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee can be linked. You can find the members in the Finance Committee right here. We have another version of the same message that could be sent directly to your House of Representatives or your representative in Ohio. And this link right here will allow you to identify who your representative is if you're not sure. We have all of these asks that are also very, very important to communicate to your legislators, and sending an email is a quick thing that we can do right now, and get that message off and make sure they're hearing from everybody about the importance and the very crucial nature of this issue. So at this moment, while everybody is doing that, we have these actions. There are other actions that are listed here. The blue boxes are resources that have been provided for us, and the pink boxes are actions. So these are a variety of things that can be done, places where funding is needed, messages to legislators. Please, 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 we encourage you to take this time right now and choose some of these actions. However, while you all are doing this, Crystal and Robin are still here. So we've got kind of a small group. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, we can continue the conversation while people are sending their messages or making their donations. So I'm going to go ahead and encourage people and I'm going to actually unshare because hopefully you all can see this at this point. So there.
I can jump in. This is Chris.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I want to definitely give you some additional context for House Bill 587. We had a robust conversation before everybody jumped on, but I want to give you the context that this is a great bill that is a good start in terms of trying to bring money to lead abatement efforts. It's been introduced by Representative Dontavius Geralds, who is actually from the Huff neighborhood in Cleveland, but has been in Columbus most of his adult life and is now a state representative for the Columbus area. He was a victim of lead poisoning as a child. And so this is a piece of legislation that's personal to him. He was able to convince Representative Tom Patton, who is a longtime Republican legislator from the west side of Cleveland, to jump on the bill as well. So having bipartisan support is super important and powerful. We would love to see some additional action and see some of the issues with lead service line replacement and workforce development and housing be addressed as well. It may be addressed as part of this bill later, or it could be its own bill, or it might be a strategy where we try to do both. But I wanted to let you know some of that additional context. I also have the video that Robin was trying to show, and because it's on the Alliance for the Great Lakes YouTube page. So I'll put that, I'll paste that into the chat as well.
Thank you, Crystal. And I'll still get the other one to you guys from Ohio Environmental Council.
All right, and I see that there are two people with raised hands. However, I do not see who they are. So can you guys, so I see Ginny and I see Bob. Can you guys unmute yourself? How about if we start with Bob?
Yeah, I have two questions, if that's allowed. I'm in Columbus first, I'll say that. I hear a lot about Cleveland. In fact, we were just meeting 3 hours ago about fracking, and a woman in Broadview Heights who's very active opposing fracking, so it's just 15 miles away. I never thought about lead pipes being in the service lines. I always thought of them being in the house, built in the built house. And I never thought about the supply lines. That didn't occur to me until today. Is there a map of where there are lead service lines that the public can see? So if you're at Euclid and 115th, there's no service, you can look at that detail. Is that kind of detail available to the public?
Yes.
Yes, we say it is. And Crystal could, we both jump in. Yes, yes. And I sent some as resources, and Crystal, you might have too, as a way of a resource link for people.
Yeah, the Ohio EPA has, it was mandated by House Bill 512 of the last General Assembly. They are mandated to have municipalities turn in maps detailing where their lead service lines are. And so if you go on the Ohio EPA's website, I have to search around and find that link again. You can put in your city and look up your city, and then you can pull up the maps for your city. This is where the rub is. The rub is that the maps aren't consistent. And so there are some communities where they went down to each parcel number and can tell you which house has lead service lines under them, which streets have a prevalence. And then there are other cities that look like my 4-year-old put his hand in some blue paint and slapped it on a map. And so what we've talked to Ohio EPA about was really getting granular with these maps and getting consistent, so then we can address the issue. If the municipality really doesn't have a good idea about the number of lead service lines, and that also presents a bigger problem in terms of how to address it. We've heard from some cities that we really don't know where the lead service lines are. So when we get ready we have an issue with the streets and we hit a pipe, if it is lead, we'll replace it when we see it. But that's not going to be good enough to really address the issues that we have before us. I'll also add that there is technology available with a company called Blue Conduit that's doing some work in across the globe, but definitely in Toledo, to help ascertain where those lead service lines are as well. So I've been meeting with them about how we can apply some of the concepts that they have with artificial intelligence across the entire state.
Is there a way a resident can test their water for lead?
There
Like, in the
is.
drugstore and buy something and pour water into it and it changes color or doesn't? I'm making this up completely.
You actually should be able to contact your water department and let them know that you would like to do a water testing at your home, and they should be able to supply that for you. Also, I know on the Cleveland Water Department site, they actually tell you how to do it without, if you have copper pipes and things of that nature, you can use a penny. So I would say you could also check out the Cleveland Water Department website, and they tell you a way to use a magnet. If it sticks to the pipe, it'll identify if it's lead. So check that website out, as well as call your local Ohio Department of
Thanks.
Water.
All right, awesome. Ginny, you have your hand up. Did you want to ask something, or did you want to say something?
I do want to ask something, but I want to compliment the speakers. I am so impressed with what you all have done. I'm in West Virginia, and we have similar problems in West Virginia, as do most Appalachian communities, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky. And I have worked in public health for a long time. I'm interested in knowing if you have an community education program as part of the bill or somewhere else that could be pulled off the shelf and plugged in for communities that have an interest, or maybe that don't have an interest but need to have one. Is there something
That's,
out there? Go ahead.
that's a good question. I'm smiling because I could say we have a pioneer space of that. A lot of people really never gotten engaged the way our organization have in creating a curriculum for education, which came from surveying parents and finding out what they wish they had before their children got poisoned. And we built a curriculum from around that and started our organization for the sole purpose. It was no space from the grassroots immediate afflicted space on working to bring solutions. And so we're happy to work with anybody who have an interest in, if they are interested in using our model or, critiquing around it, we're willing to work with anybody who would want it.
Wow.
And yes, it should be a policy set so that all spaces have this, because one of the biggest things that's lacking today is people don't think it's prevalent. As bad as it is, people still don't take lead poisoning as an active thing occurring each and every day, every second. And that has to change. So elevating that space for sure. And I did put my contact information in the chat since I didn't have it on my slide, but the members of Connect-A-Dot has it as well. And please share it with everyone, but reach out to us because we know this is a lonely space for our level. And even fighting to get to the table to help bring solutions that we are very familiar to know work is a hard place. And it shouldn't be a fight. It should be like, please tell us. We sit and see the work could be maybe done a little bit differently and more effectively if we have that full conversation and engagement. You can't forget the people who are afflicted by the problems that are occurring each and every day. If you don't have them to the table, how can you bring genuine solutions to what they're going through each and every day? Being a person that is flexible from both ends, the top end, as well as being part of the bottom end, I know that those conversations are not occurring, which will bring genuine solutions. When you hear from the people who are afflicted, trust and believe they're working on their solutions around these spaces, then planned and came up with them 10 years in advance. And we never get that good working relationship. And from the top could be all sincereness coming from bring this down to the bottom. But if you've never been to the bottom, you can't know what to bring from the top. And so it's like wasted times, and our children, as well as us. I just found a report actually saying that over half of the population is actually, the nation population is poison.
Yeah.
And it is like, am I shocked? No, because I've done the data and the research. But is it appalling? Yes, when this is preventable. And it is not to be taken lightly until you deal with a child that has been poisoned and watch the things that go on in their lives. Because even today, I tell people, people who know my daughter, she can get aggressive in her voice when she's angry. And they say, well, Robin, how are you allowing her to talk to you like that? And that's so disrespectful. For the people who know her, they said, no, that's her lead, because her heart is not that way of what her character is displaying.
Right.
And people who know she's poisoned can identify it, but others can't. So my story is my story, but I speak for all of the thousands of families that I have came across and personally helped and dealt with. And when our children are moving from an unsafe place to another unsafe place because all of our infrastructure is poisoned, we have some serious work to do. But grateful for what's being started, but it does take time. and our children are being hurt.
Thank you. Have you connected? I have one more question as a follow-up to that. Have you connected with faith communities on community education levels?
We educate anywhere somebody wants us. And we like
Oh.
to take our model is a workforce development model. Our members are educated to do the work of the organization and go back out in the community. So it's more like peer-to-peer work. And anybody can learn to do the work that we do. It's an enhancement, empowerment, uplifting space. You come in for one reason, but you go out the door with a magnitude of other great things that you have been enhanced with along the way. Our membership stay with, we have members from 18 years ago to present. They don't go away unless they choose to go away. We're here for them until they don't want us no more. But those are the things that we teach within the organization, and it's a beautiful space. It starts with something terrible, but it really becomes something awesome. And they become educators. We raise funds for them to become our distributors, to put our information out. Every part of what the organization do, we raise funds for the members who do it, because we know everybody's time is valuable time.
Right. I'll also add in there that I think that with environmental organizations, we are always just at capacity. And that was one of my criticisms of environmental organizations when I first came in, having come from being the lobbyist for Kent State University for 8 years. So I'm like, come on, why is everybody always at capacity? And that was everybody's favorite word, but it really is the truth in terms of having so much work to do that we just don't have enough time or manpower or political will to really make all of the alliances necessary to make the substantive impact that we really want to see. And so I've started to have conversations with the faith community here in Cleveland. Part of what we've started to have conversations around is working with youth. And the youth have an interest in environmentalism and addressing these issues, but they also want to talk about mental health, and they want to talk about violence. And so we're trying to meet people where they are and not force them into having conversations that we want them to have, but really having organic, reciprocal relationships where everybody kind of lifts up some synergies in our work. And so I think that's definitely not enough of what it should be, but I think the beginning stages, we're definitely in the beginning stages of creating those sustainable relationships over time.
Great, that's great. I think you found part of our connecting the dots theme is just that, connecting those dots. Yeah. So we should work on that.
Yes, for sure.
Put that on the list. Okay.
So I don't know if anybody else has a question, if they want to unmute themselves, if they want to ask and talk with Robin or Crystal. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to jump in really quickly right here, and I'm going to point out that connecting the dots is here as a platform for issues of environmental justice, along with actions, and we are here to lift up and provide a space for everyone who's here to bring their concerns and the issues that are in front of them, the issues that are facing them. And every month we choose, we don't choose, but we, are given topics that are of interest and concern and dire importance to you all. So I want to take a second right now. And if you have an event that you want to publicize, share with everybody here, please go ahead and drop that in the chat. And then if you also have ideas for topics, issues that you want to use this space for to gain some coalitions and to gain some collaborative efforts and some work, please do that as well. Like I said, put it in the chat. We also have, a relatively small group right here. So if you want to mute yourself and say something about that, at this point, you can do that as well. If you have further questions for Crystal or Robin, also please feel free to do that. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't, miss that opportunity. one more thing. I'm going to say that I put the UUJ Environmental Justice Gmail address in the chat as well. And if you would like us to help you publicize events that you are planning, we will be happy to do that with, our regular emails. And then if you have issues that you would, concern or work that you're doing that you would like to use the space for, please send that to that address as well. And I see Anne. Anne, you're on. I think I see, Anne, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something? Okay.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I was muted. I was just wondering what kinds of lead filters are being distributed at Mount Pleasant in the neighborhood there. Is that something that goes on the faucet? Is it a house system? I'm just curious.
We're using the actual faucet filter systems, the Pure, and it attaches to the faucet. It has a 3-month filter system, and it's 99.9% lead removal through
Great.
the filtration system. We also demonstrate that there's pitchers, like 5-gallon and 2-gallon pitchers that does the same thing, made by Brita or Pure. And you do have the bigger home full filter systems that do, but we're doing the actual faucet filter systems. And that's why we said to ask for temporary filter systems that really we all should be given, and given replacements until the infrastructure is fixed. We didn't plant the pipes up under,
Right.
the ground.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Bob, I see Bob. Did you want to say something?
Yes. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit. There seems like sometimes I see groups talking about lead in water pipes, and other times I see groups talking about lead paint. And do you work on both of those, or is there some reason why groups tend to separate them, or could you elaborate on that?
Well, it depends on your interest in the space, for one. For me, being a parent, I work on all spaces because my interests and my supportive space, we're touched by the water, we're touched by the actual home, and we're touched by the soil on the outside of the environment. So lead is actually in those 3 places. You have it possibly at your water piping space. Then you have it in the home structure because of the paint itself that was used, and it was not banned until 1986. So any home that was built prior to 1986 possibly could have lead contamination in it because of years of usage in the past. And then in the home, what makes it, it's not just the eating of the paint chip, and that's a myth. Everybody think kids get poisoned by eating paint chips. It's also the lead dust that we can't see by the eye that comes from when your home is chipping or peeling. And it gets friction across those spaces, be a hand, be door opening, windows going up and down. And it's to create that dust, and kids could breathe it in, or it lands on the object that they're using, couches, wherever. And then you have the professional space of workspace of construction or working with ammunition or batteries, that if those people don't follow proper work precautions and bring things that lead dust home, it could get into cars and different spaces and continue to poison their children as well. So those are like 4 different spaces that is mainly in. And for me, I'm concerned for all. And then I have people that works on the infrastructure space because their interest is housing and if it's construction or inspecting or doing the actual contracting work. And then you have people like Crystal that works in the water environmental justice space. And then I have individuals that working in the soil space. So we have soil issues from our leaded gas. I don't know if you recall that, but because of the use of lead gas in our factories, we were, Ohio is known for a factory city. And so the smarter from the factories along with the gas, it contaminated our soil space. And that's when you start, most reasons why you see raised garden beds now, because most of our soil is contaminated. Did that answer your question? And if you like more information, a little bit more in depth, please reach out to me and I can help you with that space.
So we'll just, do you, as you and your coalition, do you work more on lead paint or lead water pipes, or
We ourselves work with the families. And like I said, we have separate space. We ourselves work directly for impacted families to give them support peer-to-peer and try to advocate in the various spaces to make it safe for everyone. We partner with Crystal and work with advocacy and policy to lift up the infrastructure space for water. I myself personally is a certified risk assessor, which allows me to do inspections of homes, as well as a lead contractor that if I wanted to work in the contracting space for that work, I would be able to do that. We partner with Environmental Health Watch, which is the administrator over our lead safe housing program and certification in Cleveland. And so we partner with them to give the lead safe certification space for the housing and bringing it up to building codes. So we're in the middle, anchored to surrounding partners to make this work all the way across the board. And that's sort of what we were talking about with Crystal and myself, is going to take connecting partner spaces to reach up to legislative practices, including them, to really make this work all the way across the board.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think that, Bob, most of the work has been around lead paint. That was the most immediate need locally and throughout the state. It's something you can see. And so you can see the paint chips peeling. And so that has been really garnered the attention of a lot of the groups that are working on the ground on these issues. There is slowly been a move towards working more to talk about lead service lines. But to answer questions, it's more focused on lead paint because that's where we were able to get the synergy to really start to address the issue. And so, and definitely in cities like Cleveland, the lead paint issue has captured the attention of our local legislature. And so we're riding the wave and getting that fixed and trying to now get lead service lines to be part of that conversation, since we can really leverage the conversations on water infrastructure.
With the housing being being attended to in some sense, and still work to do, but we're there. We have that attention. To create a healthy home environment, you have to create that whole house. And so creating that healthy home with the paint and removing it and fixing it, with the lead paint, if we don't do the water service line, then we're defeating that whole work. So it has to come together.
Well,
I'm glad quickly.
thank you both. Thank you all for such a wonderful discussion. And last week's topic had covered the lead paint, I believe. will be on the UUJO YouTube channel. And there's a lot of work still to be done. Thank you both. Our next action event for Connecting the Dots will be April 24th, when Pat Roberts of Together We Grow Gardens.org has agreed to talk about community gardens. And actually, I just wanted to add one thing when you were talking about raised beds because of soil in the land. Lead in the soil. I know, in fact, a neighbor of ours tested theirs and found that the runoff from paint on their garage had poisoned the ground. And so they could not grow their vegetables there. They had to choose another location. So this is much more common than we think. You can always join in our discussion group. You can join us by sending an email at uujoenvironmentaljustice@gmail.com. I am not going to read the whole Google group thing. The Padlet has been put in the chat, so you can link to that and see some follow-up action items. And I will close out with a quote from Jane Goodall, who says, "You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.